cannot help but comment as I appear once more in this city, that as I appear before the citizenry, I am indeed humbled in your presence. But I hope the more so that all of us together will feel humbled in the presence of the history that this ancient city represents. A history that we must ever keep in mind in these trying times. For one thing is certain, through the continual vicissitude of things, that things are in a constant flux and constant change. To know where we have been better prepares us to know where we are and where we are going. I am humbled indeed, after 3 years of retirement, to be called back into public service. Humbled indeed to know that 3 years ago, as I had stood for the office of President of the United States, that in that year of 1796, our nation was not yet ready to make any dramatic change. Oh, it was dramatic enough to know that His Excellency, General George Washington, had decided that he would not accept a third term, and how well all of us know that he could have been easily elected, that he could remain president of our nation for his entire lifetime. But as well we know, His Excellency stood upon principle in recognition that we are the first nation in the history of mankind, not to be founded upon monarchy nor aristocracy, but rather to be founded upon principle, the principles of self-government. And thereby we observed 3 years ago in the presidential election of 1796 that politics, just like nature, abhors a vacuum, does it not? All factions began to implode as to who should be the next president of the United States. The Federalists, as they had become known, had occupied the office for a secured 8 years. They believed whoever was vice president, quite naturally, should be the next president of the United States. How many of you all are of that particular political opinion? I would vouchsafe not many. Nor should we be, for the Almighty has created our minds free, and free He intends it to remain. As we have been created different in face and form, so are we created different in mind, and where has man been more free to proffer difference of opinion than he is as a citizen of the United States of America? And to recognize that error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it, and to recognize that our great progress forward has not been simply to engage in a stalemate over difference of opinion, but rather to proceed forward through compromise and resolution on behalf of the common good. And thereby invited to stand for the office of President on behalf of those whom have become known as the anti-federalists, the Democratical Republicans. We recognize, no, our nation was not yet ready to make a change, and I succumbed in that presidential election, and thereby have had to suffer the office of vice president for these last 3 years. And that is why I now acknowledge that I am invited to return into the public forum, where I have been invited to stand once more for the office of the presidency of the United States. As you know, our Constitution is written that whoever receives the second highest number of votes in presidential election automatically becomes vice president. If there were ever a fault in our Constitution, that is certainly the most prominent, is it not? The mind of man, in my opinion, never conjured up a more useless office than that of Vice President of the United States. Perhaps my time has been best spent in a retired reed at Monticello, but citizens, nay, indeed, as you well know, I have not been a silent Vice President. For I will not allow the reins of our nation's government to be held by those who seek their sole their sole interest on behalf of their select coterie, on behalf of themselves, and deny the opinions of the people themselves, or deny the protection of a minority as they seek a majority rule. I have not sat by to suffer while our nation has engaged itself in a greater deficit of spending than has ever been known before. In fact, I have never gotten over the fact we began this nation spending money we did not have. I have not remained silent while we have suffered the creation of a national bank that is driven forward by those select few who hold the reins, those who could afford to purchase the shares in that financial institution, those who could afford to appoint themselves the boards of directors of that institution. I have not sat idly by where our nation has become the more antagonistic to our old ally France, and forgetting that the victory of our American Revolution would have never been secured without the aid of France. These are trying times for our factions. I want to continue their contest, and it has even been suggested this year of 1799 that New England will seek an opportunity to secede from the Union, for they have felt the South has become the more immoral in their support of the institution of slavery. I answer to you, citizens, if we allow this to occur, will that end the argument? Oh, nay, indeed, for we know in our hearts and our conscience that these are ancient arguments. They have existed from time immemorial, and that we, as a people, both North and South, have shown the rest of the world that civilized man can seek a compromise and resolution on behalf of their general good. And lest we forget that on the 15th day of May, 1776, in the old Capitol building there to the east, Virginia became the first of all of the colonies to pronounce itself free and independent of Great Britain, and the more importantly, to put forth that resolution for independency, to be introduced into the Continental Congress, then seated in Philadelphia. I was there seated, and I will never forget the immediate consternation of the delegates from Rhode Island and the Providence plantations, even smaller Delaware. How would they be expected to follow the resolution of the largest, the wealthiest, the most populated of all the British colonies, until suddenly they reminded themselves this has been achieved by the largest, the wealthiest, the most populated of all the British colonies. If mighty Virginia could reconcile its internal divisiveness and move forward through compromise and resolution for the common good, yea, indeed, this may be followed by her sister colonies. Lest we forget, when I was invited to take up the pen to draft our Declaration of American Independence, though seated on the committee was Mr. Adams of Massachusetts, Mr. Sherman of Connecticut, Mr. Livingston of New York, Dr. Franklin of Pennsylvania, it was Mr. Adams who suggested that a Virginian should be at the head of this business, because the business had begun in Virginia. And here we are now, faced with another presidential election year. Many have said that I have continued to engage divisiveness, that I have continued to spur, if you will, antagonisms towards our federal government, that it is said that I have taken up the pen to inscribe resolutions of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The question has never been asked of me personally. I will admit that John Taylor of Caroline has put forth imputations that I might have done so, but as is my custom with imputations, I never provide a statement. I may say this, however, that Mr. Madison and myself have colluded to suggest resolutions of the Commonwealth of Virginia and Kentucky, We are concerned, as I hope you all are, of recent acts of our federal government put forth within the last 2 years of 98 and 99, 4 acts in particular, known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Laws, to deny the inherent right of the citizenry of our nation to express their opinion